Well, joining me in the studio this evening is the sports blogger Laurence McKenna. Now, Laurence, let's start on deflategate. What are your thoughts? It doesn't seem like Tom Brady's agent is very happy with the findings.
Yeah, did some great dodging of the questions as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that quite impressive, though. There's so many sportsmen out there who manage to dodge whatever critical question it is that's asked of them when they most need to answer the question. It was always going to be difficult to prove because you're always doing it after the fact, and it's very difficult to prove what people have done around this because the only person who can actually catch them is the people who are touching the ball. And most of the time it benefits the people who are touching the ball. So whether someone's actually going to give up the rest of their teammates is, well, the question's already been answered. They're probably not going to do that, right?
Yeah, well, he's the golden boy of the game. Do you think they'll come down hard on him when it comes to punishments?
Well, that's the interesting side, isn't it? Do you come down on the guy who's one of the biggest faces in the league? NFL does seem very good at dealing with these kind of things. You know, I mean, we've seen in the past they've recently addressed concussions and they've addressed other sources of cheating.
Domestic violence as well.
Domestic violence, use of steroids and other banned drugs. So in the past they've been reasonably harsh, but because he is the face of the sport, you wonder, are they really going to come down that hard on him, and especially as he's such a successful player himself?
OK, well, let's move on to the other football, the English football. Depay going to Manchester United, a great signing for them?
A fantastic signing if he can live up to the potential that he's already fulfilling in the Eredivisie. 21 goals in 28 games is an incredible record, and you know he has basically exploded onto the scene. I've spoken to quite a few people who cover the Netherlands recently, and it's quite interesting to see the reaction to him. At one point, he was quite a divisive character, apparently quite arrogant as a youngster, and that was taken out of him, and basically taken out of his game by good managers and people who showed him the right way to manage his real talent.
So LVG will be able to handle a talent like this?
Well, Louis van Gaal's already worked with him with the national side, and they seem to have taken to each other. They've certainly paid a good price for him, and you'd say that if he can fulfil that potential, then it's going to be a bargain price. A lot of other teams sniffing around him, but with the Dutch coach hooking up with the current Dutch player, you'd say it's going to be interesting to see what they do, especially what he brings to United. He's not actually a striker anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, why has LVG gone for a forward, and why has he gone for an attacking player? Why aren't they going for a defensive player? Well, surely that's where they need it the most. He's
not quite been able to enforce his tactics yet this season. He often says that it's a bit of a lag between the time that he joins the team and then being able to actually implement his tactics. And he needs some basically intelligent and offensive players to do that. And it's fair to say that Depay is both. He's got a great record, like I say, and what most people will be hoping he can transition and explode into the Premier League in the way that he seemed to be doing over the past few years in the Eredivisie and onto the international stage as well. Okay. So it's good. It's exciting, basically.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait for the next season, but we have to get through this season first, where Aston Villa will actually stay up. So Depay's coming in. Does this mean that there's no place for Van Persie? What's going to go with him?
Well, you'd say that actually maybe he complements a striker who's slightly slower. He's got really incredible pace in the first place. He's obviously is now a Dutch national, in inverted commas. And certainly they're looking to move on from the generation that is Van Persie, but they need intelligent footballers within this side. And that's why at the weekend we saw Van Persie and Wayne Rooney sitting at the head of that midfield and basically spraying the ball around sideways but never too far forward. And it shows that Louis van Gaal's basically saying, I'm limited with my options and I need more options. Depay is a very different option for United because some of their options at the moment seem to be looking a little bit lazy or as if they're going to be leaving in the summer. So we'll see how he switches up the squad. It's going to be quite interesting to see how much money he gets and how much he gets from his transfers, because if those transfers offer enough money, he's going to get some real talent who want to play under Louis van Gaal. Well, his name's a real draw.
He's building already, but do you think that they'll actually finish in the top four? They want the Champions League again. Do you think they can get it?
Well, they're really dropping off. Losing that many games in a row and then losing to West Brom, obviously, who are looking to stay up, is not a great record recently. But it looks as if mathematically it's going to be difficult for Liverpool to catch them. So they're going to feel fairly self-assured. One more win will probably get them over the line, and then you can attract players who want Champions League football. And it's fair to say there are quite a few players who would love to play for Manchester United and under Louis van Gaal.
OK, well, moving on to Spanish football, and obviously we watched Messi last night, doing what he does best. Is there anything else to say about the little magician?
Well, yeah, that's part of it, isn't it? Is you're almost sick of the superlatives that go along with Messi at this point. He is an incredible player, and obviously this Barcelona side is a much better team with him in it. But there was an incredible amount of talent around him, and as part of the front three, he looks so much better than the isolated figure that we saw of Messi just a couple of months ago at the World Cup, and then also at the beginning of the season under Luis Enrique. And it's funny how now they're getting the wins on the board, people don't seem to be questioning his ego, questioning what his space in the side is, those kind of things. So it's interesting to see the transitional phase that Barcelona have been through. And it almost came full circle the other night when they beat Pep Guardiola, who was the guy who basically made Messi into the player or started him on the path to be the player that he is now. So in many ways, it's interesting to see where Barcelona are going.
It's a frightening front three when you actually think about it.
Suarez, Neymar and Messi.
It's brutal. They're going to get to the final. They have to. I can't see Bayern Munich actually bouncing back. I think the other two games I could because, they're playing at home and they spank the other teams like 5-0 or 8-0, but not Barcelona. I can't see it.
It's also interesting to see who they may come up against in the final. If they come up against Real Madrid, we get El Clasico. If we come up against Juventus, then we've got a very thoughtful side. Ooh. So I'll be interested to see whether the underdogs take it.
Well, let's talk about Spanish football in general. What are your thoughts about what's going on at the moment?
More power to the players, first of all, is definitely the message out there. And I think that's why the players are being so public and vocal about this in the first place. It's clear that there is an imbalance of funds within La Liga. And not only that, but there seems to be the wrong people messing around in it. I know the government are trying to regulate it, and that's why people are talking about it now. And it is important to have regulation for the finances within football. But the problem is there are too many people who want to put their finger in the pot, essentially, and there are too many people who are trying to maintain their own interests. The main problem with the league is that the two big draws are currently Barcelona and Real Madrid. And in many ways, that means that clubs like Atletico, Villarreal, Valencia, who are trying to break into the top echelon, can't do it for long enough and over a sustained period. It makes it a great product, but it doesn't necessarily make it a sustainable and therefore always competitive league. And I think if we're spreading the money around and we're looking to regulate a bit more, that's what this might do. So we'll see if the players come to some sort of an agreement.
Right, joining me in the studio this evening is the sports blogger Laurence McKenna, and we have to start with our MVPs. Brilliant story, isn't it?
It's a great story, but it's being used as a bit of a political pawn, isn't it?
How so?
By Italian football in general, I think. I think there's a lot of issues in Italian football which maybe go unaddressed. And sometimes, if a team gets promotion or something, I mean, I hate to be cynical about this because it is a great story.
Please be cynical, yeah.
But, at some point you have to ask, if people are having stones thrown at them and, people are having racist abuse thrown at them, then there's probably a much bigger issue there that needs to be addressed. And it's interesting to say that the one thing that maybe the fans couldn't affect was them getting promoted because the system is the only thing there that works. But there are some big issues in Italian football. Which
don't you think that this improves relations when it comes to racism, though?
Having worked in football for quite some time, I'm very cynical around the powers that be, and I would say that there are obviously people that want to do good within the game. There are people that want to reach out to people who, like you say, maybe don't have the same advantages that others have, and they want to give everyone the opportunity because football is a great tool to do that. I would say I'm also very cynical about the people who then rush to the press as soon as someone gets promoted and will only be seen next to a successful side. And I think success is something that buys you the press in football. But if the side were not so successful, I wonder how many people would be extolling the virtues of this side. And so I think we do need to cynically evaluate it as well. I'm not cynically evaluating their achievement because it is a great achievement. Any side to be promoted within the league, we know takes a lot of work, and you have to be a good team to be able to get there. But it's what surrounds that I think we need to be critical of.
OK, well, sticking with football, and Sepp Blatter, you saw our report earlier on today. He seems to care about women's football all of a sudden.
Well, he's always cared about women's football. It just depends on what he cares about in women's football, whether it's tighter shorts or maybe, I don't know, tighter schedules. I don't know. It all seems very political again.
He feels like the godfather, a godfather, not the godfather, but a godfather of women's football. Now, what could be his motive for saying something like that?
I really don't know. Is there an election coming up soon? But that's the interesting thing, isn't it, is that it does seem to be only when someone can gain something from it are they saying something positive about it. And saying you're the godfather, maybe that's part of it, is if he's asked about it and someone says, are you the godfather of this, or, do you consider yourself to be a leading light in that, then maybe he's got to give that answer, and then the press get their quote. But I would say, maybe in an uncynical way, in the time that Blatter has been in his presidency, there have been some positive things, and he has tried to expand the game. One huge thing that any president will have to deal with, and we're seeing this in the political elections in England right now, is the bureaucracy and the huge companies that they end up dealing with. And, dealing with big companies and trying to convince them to move in certain directions towards women's football, which maybe isn't as lucrative for them financially.
He's promoting it. He's spoken about it openly. I think so. That's got to be some sort of good, no?
I mean, I'd say there you're fulfilling the basics. To speak about women's football openly, as you say, is something that you should be doing anyway. And it's also interesting to see that we have a man speaking about that, and we don't have maybe a female head saying something like that. There are other roles which I think need to be fulfilled within the sport first. And we're wondering whether Sepp Blatter himself even needs to be heading that up, or whether it should have its own division which is pushing that out, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, women in sport have responded to Blatter's comments, saying that Sepp Blatter's comments provide a welcome platform for affirming the work that needs to be done if equality in women's football is to be achieved both on and off the pitch. If they're taking it as a positive thing, surely all of us can take it as a positive thing. That is actually command centre.
Press statements are excellent things, though, aren't they? It's not like they're going to come out and say at any point, oh, this is a terrible thing that Sepp Blatter said. We can't believe, we don't want to work with him, etc. They're going to have to work alongside him, and so relations have to be good. And I think definitely from a media standpoint, it's our role to be critical of what's going on within that and make sure that it isn't just all roses for the guys who are to be held accountable for a lot of what's going on. I'm not saying he's a terrible figure and he's done always terrible things, but to go from you need to be wearing tighter shorts to this is progress. But it's how much progress that actually is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? How much progress is that, really?
Well, you think he's going to get a 5th term then?
Particularly as he stands relatively unopposed, you'd say he probably will end up with that. And I think he also wants the idea that he can complete some of what he started. And there are people around him, who part of his team, etc., who probably want to see the same. So you'd say, especially within the structures of football, he probably will.
OK, well, moving on to boxing. Khan against Mayweather. What do you think?
It's another lovely way to make more money, isn't it?
Oh, you're so cynical. Come on.
Every time I've come on this show, I think I've said that I don't appreciate the money-making within boxing. And there are different levels to it. And this level of boxing, like we've always said, is another level of sport, because a huge part of it is mental. And Amir Khan is an interesting strand in that, because sometimes he's struggled with the mental side of things and struggled with, the public eye, or struggled with competing against other people within his field, because he's got such intense scrutiny around him. And so when someone he's going to come up against has even more scrutiny, it's going to be interesting to see how the two match up.
OK, well, thank you very much for your views this evening.